and then you don't see this. I should have logged in as a student. It's case study discussions is the one we're going to use, and it brings you back to where we were. So that icon from the My Web CT brings you straight to this site. But if you come to the home page, you would use those steps, communications and case study discussion links to get here. When you're going to post one, you'd click on compose message. You would leave the topic as main, and then when you put in a subject, I'll just put in my case 3 Felix, and you know, if you've got it in Microsoft Word, you can copy it and paste it into here. If I'll show you one where I attached a file, a figure. You just click on the attach file and it works like any other attach file function in Windows. Browse, go look for it. When you find it, then you select it and then attach it. And I'll show you how that looks in a moment. Once you've got it set, you can click on preview to see how it would look. I didn't put a subject in there, so it won't let me do it. Oh, I did. There's no content. And when you're finished, you just click on post and then it will be posted. I'm not going to post it right now because I don't want to add confusion. As soon as you post it, well, before you post it, before you select the one you're actually going to do from our textbook, remember, I ask you to do 2 from here and then 1 that you find elsewhere. You go to the calendar and just begin looking. You can click from month to month. No one else, of course, has posted anything yet, but here you can see this is today, and it says Felix case study 1 and 2 posted for 7 days. So that means a week from there, I'll take those 2 off and assess who contributed and who didn't, and then send a report to myself, a list of those individuals that did or didn't. You can always get a list of the names of the people in the course to keep track of it. Let me go to the mailbox. When you compose a message and you click on the browse, you have people's names here. Oh, you can't right click and copy though. Okay. But I guess that'd be the way for you to go and check to see. But this is also a way that you can send emails to globally to everybody else in the class and tell them that you've got your case study posted, the dates that it will be there, and you know that you expect each of them to get involved. So that's through the mailbox. So through these 2 mechanisms, you can prompt individuals to participate, and you can track the case study discussions. I'll take you now to the case study 1. So there's 4 of 7 that I haven't read yet. No one has done anything with my second one yet. So I can click on the little looking glass there and magnifying glass and go in to view it. So here is the first posting with the questions. I give credit to my source, and then here's my response to the questions. I just thought I'd toss something in, and then here's the first response from another individual. Again, seeing their names are shown there as well. The person decided to come back and add a little bit, and then again, or just kept clicking the button. So, sorry, G. I didn't mean to embarrass you. I think you clicked the button a few times. Okay. That's all right. That's why I'm putting some up first, so we can just get used to it and become more familiar with it. Again, as I said, this is a forum where more people get involved than when I try to hold these in the class, or if we went to the chat room to find a time when everybody would be on there to do it live. There's a lot of reading and email trails, I call them, embedded in there. But I've found it to be, after many years of teaching this course, the most effective way to have people make contributions, because in just a minute you can read things over and make a few comments, and the person who's responsible for the case study can add replies to the trail of comments, and as well send a global email to everyone, as I said, through the mailbox, and just select everyone, or one person, or two or three. If you want to select just three people, you push the control button on the keyboard and just select the ones that you want, and it'll only go to them. So as with all email systems, they are monitored. It is permanent documentation with the backups and the records of the system. So ethics in electronic communication are extremely important in all these situations. So through those means, we can meet our responsibilities to the course, to post 3 case studies and keep it up there for 6 or 7 days, and encourage everyone to get involved, and then to report to me on at least the list of the names of individuals that did participate, and then I can compare it to the total list and see who didn't. And as noted in the syllabus, you do have to get involved in each of these in order to get the full credit for the course. I don't yet have quizzes up for the streaming video lectures that are accompanied by these PDF files. I did get today's Chapter 1, Lecture 2 posted just today before coming in, which 3 or 4 years from now won't make any sense to the audience out there in viewer land, but anyway, for those here today in fall of 2005, it's just posted. So let's go ahead and complete Chapter 1 and build our foundation in somewhat, you might think of it as biomedical ethics, but it's research ethics across the board. And you'll see that the first case study I posted is actually on the ethics of plant research. So it's important that we begin to build that into the course, and I thought posting a case study submitted by a student last year on the topic was a good idea. So in this portion of the chapter, we're talking about concepts, theories, and principles. And this is just a quick list. We'll look at each of them in a bit more detail as we go through. I'm setting my pointer here. So the key ethical theories that the authors have included in the textbook, and it's a short list on the long list of those that indeed do exist: Kantianism, utilitarianism, natural law, virtue ethics, natural rights, social contract theory, divine command theory are the ones that the authors felt were most important to mention in the context of research ethics. I'll just read these brief descriptions, and then we'll go to slides dedicated on each. So Kantianism states that humans have an inherent moral obligation not to mistreat other human beings. You'll see that this is in the category of deontological theories, moral theories, and it focuses on intrinsic right or wrong. So there's this inherent component of being a human being where right and wrong should be obvious. Most often, the Kantianism will be based upon rules, a set of rules that guide behavior. And I challenge people to associate this more with individual rights. It's not the complete definition of Kantianism, but it is one that makes you focus on other human beings. If it is not right to do that to a human being, then it shouldn't be done. In contrast, utilitarianism balances the cost and benefits of possible action to the largest number of people possible. In actuality, it is to everyone in the universe, so it is completely global and universal in that sense. Everyone must be able to benefit. But in order to achieve the utility, some may be harmed along the way. So in other words, if we use the example of human research, placebo groups where you know, say with terminal disease, where you know individuals are going to die because they receive no treatment, had been, it's no longer felt to be justifiable, but had been justified under utilitarianism, never would be justified under Kantianism. So that's one example of where there could be a distinction. Utilitarianism does allow harm in certain instances if it is justified. Kantianism would never allow it because it is intrinsically wrong in that theory. Natural laws view some things like life, happiness, etc. as good, while other things like death and disease are naturally bad. Additionally, natural law views the motives of an action as important. So what we're beginning to see is that there are pieces and parts of each of these that we as individuals typically utilize in our decision-making process to act and to judge others' acts or our own acts. And we'll see that the authors basically advise us as moral individuals to be comfortable with borrowing from many different theories to piece ourselves together as a moral individual that can utilize reasoning in their approaches to life and being a moral agent in life. Virtue ethics focuses on developing moral character traits like honesty and integrity. Natural rights takes the view that all people have certain inherent rights such as life, property, and freedom. In the social contract theory, it's believed that people naturally form mutually advantageous societies with politics and morals. Now, the divine command theory believes that moral questions are addressed by what a deity commands. For example, follow the Ten Commandments. So let's think about each of those separately after we make this point consistent with the authors. There's no single true theory. We note that theories are made up of principles, rules, and judgments, and they are subordinate in that sequence. Excuse me. So judgments are part of an outcome of rules, also of generating rules, depending upon whether we're talking about meta-ethics and normative ethics or practical ethics. In practical ethics, we turn to rules if we see or justify the need to invoke a rule. We use a rule to make a judgment. And in judging whether an act is right or wrong, it can either precede the act or follow the act. So we can use it as a guide to make a decision to act by judging beforehand or judging an act after the fact for whatever purposes. A rule might not be utilized, therefore a principle, more global, overarching one, might play the role, or an entire theory might be invoked to contribute to making a decision or a judgment. So if we use utilitarianism as the example, the principle is utility. A rule must be useful to everyone in the universe. Obviously it can't be achieved, but it is the guiding rule. And the judgment is harm to someone is justified to benefit all. So the placebo study was the one that was mentioned. If we take it to a social issue in the context of September 2005, we know that many individuals are harmed or have been harmed in coming up with a useful approach to getting aid to all the citizens of New Orleans, Louisiana in particular. And there are many criticisms about it. It's a case where it may have been impossible to benefit everyone there and to save them and rescue them and so on and so forth. but we are certainly looking for not only moral and ethical theories, principles, rules to come up with judgments, but there's a lot of politics involved as well, and there may be some laws indeed that we will invoke in order to come up with a judgment and seek some type of sanction against the responsible individuals who can be held accountable. So in a bit more detail, Kantianism, founded by Immanuel Kant quite a few hundred years ago. And according to this theory, every human being has a moral dignity to behold and should follow a set of rules termed the categorical imperative, and should not do anything to violate the moral rules. It is a deontological theory which places emphasis on moral rules and values. Again, if something is intrinsically wrong, then you cannot do it. So, to cause death, by definition murder, it is wrong, certainly under Kantianism. So the ethical conduct is a matter of choosing to live one's life according to moral principles or rules. So there's somehow some long list of principles and rules that the individual turns to unfailingly, and every single time that they're making a decision to act or to judge an act, and it's never done differently. We should not abuse, manipulate, harm, exploit, or deceive people in order to achieve specific goals, whether it's goals to improve the situation for everyone or for the individual. Utilitarianism, Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill contributed these in roughly the same era. Any behavior is morally acceptable as long as it benefits society or a large number of people. So this leaves some room for decision making and allows harm to whatever degree it may be justified. Harm is not always death to an individual. We know there are many other ways that individuals can be harmed. Hence, it is a theory based on consequentialism, wherein the outcome is given importance. The supplemental lecture on moral theories will discuss consequentialism, and you will be guided through a more lengthy discussion of consequentialism there. Basically, what we need to think about is how do you determine if any one particular outcome is good? By what means do we do that? In utilitarianism, utility is the principle that we invoke to determine if an outcome is good or bad. So, what method do we use to determine if enough people are going to benefit? If not all, why not all throughout the universe? And then, work our way down through there. The harm principle, non-maleficence, we will see is always invoked. It always must be involved in the decision-making process. If it is ruled out, there's absolutely no possibility that someone or anyone could be harmed in any way, then we have several other principles to invoke in guiding the decision, and the decision obviously is much easier to make. There are two types of utilitarian theories. One is act utilitarian theory, which evaluates the utility of action, and the other is rule utilitarian theory, which lays stress on the actions themselves. So the empirical evidence is used for judging the validity of any theory based on utilitarianism. So there are lists of rules and acts that have been judged, and they are turned to in guidance, but not as a strict rule book to determine what the act or decision would be. So the basic insight of utilitarianism is that the right thing to do is to produce the best overall consequences for the most people. And allowing death is justified because more would benefit. So how do we judge the researchers that completed the FDA requirements for some of the more recent drugs that are being pulled off the market because of potential harm or documented harm? Were they unethical in their approach? Who really is responsible and accountable is the key question that we would ask. Why do the investors in these pharmaceutical companies have to be harmed in that they won't make the profits that they anticipated, or they may even lose money and be in hardship when only a relatively small number of individuals were harmed by that? Now, that's one line of reasoning. Another line of reasoning is that in some of the cases there were thousands of people that were harmed by these drugs and new agents, even larger numbers of individuals than in the ongoing war in Iraq, and social outcries based upon that. How can the federal government not be acting more directly and more strongly in a case where 20, 30,000 people are harmed and not contribute the resources to make sure that things are done right and that people are remunerated in a fashion consistent with the degree of their harm? The natural law theory, so it's on the age-old tradition that right and wrong, and says that individuals should abstain from doing anything which might result in evil like death, suffering, pain, and disease, what are thought to be obvious, natural, bad things. No one wants to die, no one wants to suffer, no one wants to experience pain or have disease. We want happiness, even in its loosest definition. This is what we seek for others and for ourselves, obviously putting others first at all times. It's similar to Kantianism in that there's moral rules and values that are invoked strongly and have power over the decision-making process. Though it may find good application for an individual code of behavior, it's not able to address the complicated issues arising out of technology such as mercy killing and cloning and a variety of things like that. Because these are at the fringes of what we understand about nature, they haven't been included in the development of this theory over time. So what we're beginning to see is that when more than one theory might be invoked, one tends to be less useful, so the one that is more useful is more strongly invoked and more likely to be reliant in leading to a justifiable and reasonable decision to act or to judge. So some things such as life, happiness, health, and pleasure are naturally good, while other things such as death, suffering, disease, and pain are naturally evil. So these are good guidelines to work with, but if they don't get specific enough about a particular act, then, or if it isn't a clear extension, like there was a recent publication on the ability of an in utero fetus actually to feel or experience neurologically pain that has been quite upsetting in the context certainly of abortions, and the date, the time in the pregnancy is much farther out than anti-abortionists would like it to be, and it's a single case. We question how the data was collected. I didn't read the article myself. I would assume that it was approved by the research institution. So a lot arises from that. That might be a case that somebody would select at any time in history as one being very controversial. So obviously we can see that it deals directly with pain, but it is remotely related to determining if the individual fetus, regardless of whether they can experience pain, is considered to be a human being. At what point in time do we consider a concepsus, even if it's an embryo or a zygote just after conception, to be a human being? So natural law deals with pain, but there's very little else here that could guide us in making a decision in that context. So we might invoke some other theory or principle to work on that type of an argument, even if the fetus cannot experience pain. Then what is the justification for saying that abortion, especially in the later months, is immoral and unethical? Our basic ethical duty is to perform actions that promote those things that are natural goods and to avoid doing things that result in natural evils. So we have some type of obligation. Next is the natural rights. So these are rights that individuals would have. Again, these have all emerged in the early, or the mid, millennium. Would be that the second millennium, the middle of the second millennium. Up to 1000 is the first millennium. Up to 2000, the second millennium. Are we in the third millennium now? Anyway, it's been refined over the centuries. Each and every individual has certain basic set of rights, including freedom of religion, expression, life, and property. But an individual should not harm the interests of society. So we all have natural rights, and those are protected to the degree that there is minimal risk of harm to others, especially in the context of society. So the harm principle postulates that an individual's rights may be restricted if it is harmful to the society, and at the extreme end of this principle is paternalism, which restricts individuals' right in order to promote the best interests of this individual. Certainly within the present era of the Patriot Act, we know that certain rights that we have had are being compromised. The selection of Supreme Court judge, now the Chief Justice selection, has that as a context. People in society are asking if this individual truly appreciates or values some of our natural rights, and questions whether our rights might be sacrificed too readily by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. This would not be a good situation. Once you begin to give up your individual rights, then the slippery slope idea is taken into account, and we question just how many rights we may lose. Is it truly reversible? Will we get back all of our rights? Will we ever be able just to go to an airport like we used to in the old days and zip right through and get on the airplane in a reasonable amount of time? It may never happen again. Will we have the right to protect our home and certain freedoms? So property, liberty, property, freedom of thought and expression, the freedom of religion. The harm principle, as I said, is non-maleficence, and paternalism is somewhat of an extreme aspect of natural rights being sacrificed. And this, of course, is based upon the case of a father making decisions for his children. So the individual does benefit, but they lose authority over their own rights. Next, the social contract theory. This theory, which inspired the French Revolution, was proposed by Hobbes, a French philosopher, Jean-Jacques Thoreau. According to this theory, people accept moral and political values because they find it mutually advantageous. So in order to have an intact social unit, there must be common values and principles that benefit everyone in that social group. The Hobbesian insight found its application in the development of scientific ethics designed to promote effective collaboration and cooperation in research. So as we had stated, the social aspect of science is extremely important because it's rare that scientists work alone in present time. So the moral standards are conventions or rules that people adopt in forming a just society. So we'll talk about the rules and regulations for authorship. The National Institutes of Health has clear definitions of what is a co-principal investigator, what is a consultant, and various outcomes are determined by that definition. In other words, types of salary and benefits that can come from participating in and contributing to the principal investigator's research. Of ultimate, if not utmost importance in research ethics is professional society. So you are going to the professional society sites, for example, looking for a code of ethics. Part of that code of ethics should reflect part of the social contract theory of that component of our overall society that accepts professional responsibility and accountability for the content, the knowledge content, like whether it's the Neuroscience Society or the Society of Experimental Biology and Medicine. There's a wide variety of them. That professional society takes responsibility and is accountable for its members and the type of research that they perform. There are also federal agencies, as we know, that have laws that regulate things, and that all should be consistent, such that there is one overall research professional society that fits into the world society and the society of each nation, abiding by the laws and the considered moral norms and standards in that society. Next, the divine command theory derives its principles from the ancient religious books and are supported by theologists and are dictated by human conscientiousness. The four moral principles of this theory are non-maleficence, beneficence, autonomy, and justice. The divine command theory considers that as long as people have worshipped deities, they have believed that they should follow the commands of the deities. I know that in the prior lecture I mentioned that religion is separate from research, but it cannot always be separated from researchers. Some researchers may be atheist, may be agnostic, but they certainly do recognize the value of some of the moral standards generated through religious beliefs and theology, and may even practice some of them. So religion may inspire ethical conduct in individuals or in groups, even if it is not the foundation for moral concepts and principles. So those basic moral principles, non-maleficence, beneficence, autonomy, and justice, let's give them some brief definitions. They can be much more lengthy than this, obviously. Theoretical philosophers can dedicate chapters to them. But in brief, non-maleficence states that you should not inflict unjustified harm on another. So you should not inflict it. You shouldn't cause it, in other words. You should not stand by and allow it. You should intervene. If you see that it happens, you should act. So if the principle of non-maleficence is invoked, then there is obligation. This could be applied to the research setting in a wide variety of ways. If you are working in a research laboratory, actually, if you take the chemical biohazard materials training course, you are told that if you observe unsafe practices, you're obligated to report it. If you are in a laboratory and you see someone who is mishandling bacteria or toxic agents, you're obligated to step forth and say something to prevent harm. So it is extremely important that we understand that. So it goes beyond questioning whether in a study with humans as the research subjects, if there is any potential risk of harm to the subjects, or with animals, are all the regulations being followed such that it is considered and categorized as humane treatment of those research animals? If there is an infraction, what steps do I take? Do I confront the individual? Do I confront the individual responsible for the research laboratory? It might be the senior research technical person or the PI of the laboratory. Do I go straight to the department chair, to the dean, to the president, to the National Institutes of Health, to the police department? Where do I turn to follow up on that? We hope to make some of those points as we proceed in this series of lectures. At this point, we are saying that non-maleficence is a principle, when invoked, obligates action. If that action is just assessment and judgment, that everything's okay or is acceptable or justified, then the obligation has been satisfied. We also stated that the principle of non-maleficence is the one principle, especially with humans, where the legal system is called into play. So if you cause the death of a human, then obviously it has to be assessed on the motivation and whether it's premeditated, all those things that we know so much about. And then the penalty should match the crime. So that is important as well. There are also laws that regulate the treatment of animals or being responsible for controlling the exposure to harm or harmful agents of individuals working for you. At present at UTSA, we have one P3 or BSL3, Biosafety Laboratory 3. There's 4 levels. The third is obviously just under the highest level, where they work obviously with the Center for Disease Control and institutions like that with very contagious, infectious, and lethal organisms. UTSA has a second BSL3 facility coming on board just this month. It will be inspected by the CDC to see if it will be improved. So the UTSA is an institution. The identified faculty members who are responsible for assuring that these special agents are handled properly and all the paperwork is performed and completed. The individuals for the biosafety, the research faculty whose students will be training in there are all undergoing coordinated training and development of policies and procedures so that we can meet that responsibility. If a student is harmed in one of these BSL3 facilities, or if a student mistakenly, because they don't know what they're doing, releases some of these agents into the general public, then there's a lot of trouble that's going to arise, and someone will fall. Someone will be determined to be accountable, and they will be punished, in this case certainly by laws, because there is significant risk of harm to individuals and to society. Beneficence in essence, can be described as on the other hand. It's not really the opposite. It goes along with non-maleficence, but it means that you promote your own well-being and the well-being of the others. So beneficence is to do good. So it's the opposite statement of non-maleficence, to do no harm. If you never do any harm and you prevent harm from occurring, doesn't mean you're always doing good. So you need an additional principle to promote doing good. So contributing to the improvement of others and yourself. Rational individuals are autonomous, so autonomy is the other. Respect for autonomy is actually this principle. So individuals make their own decisions. They have the right to make their own decisions. If they make the wrong decisions, they're held responsible and accountable for that. But this has to be taken into account. Justice means people are treated as they deserve or get what they deserve. It is the most complicated concepts because there's a lot of different types of justice. For example, distributive justice. Who gets what resources, and how do we determine the best way to distribute resources? This becomes very important in research. I always challenge individuals to picture themselves on a research review committee for a major public or private funding agency, and you have two grant proposals that are nearly equivalent, one from extremely prestigious and universally worldwide known institution and an unknown institution. You've got to make a decision. Who do you give the money to? And I think we all kind of know what's being implied there. When you turn on CNN and you see scientists being interviewed, you typically see them from UTSA or from UT Austin, I guess, is a local example that we could use. And it becomes quite obvious that there is a social responsibility in the United States to get money to the institutions that have the historical record of making the most substantial contributions. So there's distributive justice that is taken into account there. And it's troublesome to individual scientists, because they feel they may be judged by the institution they're at rather than the quality of the research that they are proposing. So ethical decision making then is very important on all levels of research. An ethical decision occurs in a situation where there are at least two different options. This is an ethical dilemma, and the options are not ethically neutral. So in other words, you might have two opposing principles that are invoked or theories that are invoked, and you have to decide which is the more appropriate to implement in the decision-making process. An ethical dilemma is a situation where there are at least two different options and they appear to be just as good or bad from a moral point of view. So the toughest ones are where you are incapable of acting without breaking some rule or value system that would mean that the act is bad. There's just no good way to act, but an act is obligatory. You must act, but none of the choices are going to be the most pristine good. There's going to be bad to some degree or another. And those are the ethical dilemmas that are most difficult to deal with. So an ethical decision must occur in any situation where there is more than one choice. When there is a dilemma, an act must be an outcome of the situation. So they're particularly difficult ethical decisions, the ones where you've got a good and a bad choice that are really obvious are the easiest decisions. Do I chop the leg off this animal without giving any anesthesia is an obviously easy decision to make. It's not allowed, it's illegal, so you can't do it.
So the non-maleficence with the legal boundary is the principle invoked, and it's easy to determine how to act. Well, there are many ways to make ethical decisions, and the approach provided by the authors of our text are as follows. Step 1, define the problem. Step 2, look for relevant information. Step 3, consider different possible options. Step 4, relate each possible option with what values are at stake. Step 5, evaluate the options in terms of the values and the facts. Step 6, make a decision and act upon it. This is actually a description or a use, an implementation of consequentialism. The problem has to be emergent or apparent or real. You get enough information so that you can determine the possible outcomes, and then you have to evaluate what the possible consequences could be of every possible outcome, and then you weigh those to determine which is the best outcome, and then a decision for action is made. So this really is a consequentialist approach. Depending upon which principles and theories you invoke, it may or may not be any one particular type of consequentialism. If utilitarianism is used, then it is altruism is the type of consequentialistic approach using the principle of beneficence and principles of beneficence and utility. So it's also advisable to seek guidance and advice when faced with these ethical dilemmas. So obviously you don't just start with step 1 and go to step 6 and never turn back. You can recycle at any stage, going back to any level to get more and more information along the way. As we have indicated a couple of times here, we have to decide whether we go to the individual that seems to be doing something wrong, or to the individual responsible for that individual, or the individual responsible for that individual, or higher in the chain of command. Where do we start and where do we end? And when do we draw a final conclusion on making a judgment? Because the same approach is used to make a judgment of an act, and then we use a similar approach to make a decision on whether to act and how to act. Who do we turn to? So obviously seeking outside guidance and advisement is encouraged before taking any formal action. Make sure that you have all the information that is possible and determine what are the limitations of your understanding of the situation. It may be that the treatment of an animal, for example, just doesn't seem right, but it is completely approved and all documented by the appropriate institutional committee, the Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee. So simple question could be, is that procedure approved by the IACUC? And what's your protocol number? So that could settle the matter right there. Whether or not you agree with the social standards that are approved through the appropriate agencies, such as the USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture, and there's others. If it is allowable through those means, through those regulations, and has been reviewed properly, you may not agree with it, but it is allowable within the context of the research profession, reflecting society's values and goals. So the authors do not endorse situational ethics for two reasons. So in other words, in this situation, this is what you do, and you just do it. So that's not a great way to make decisions and to act or to judge. So remember, those are the three things that basically are the the byproduct of turning to a decision-making guide, a code of ethics, is you make a decision, you act, or judge, or do all three. So if you just use the situation, you say, oh, in this situation there's a precedence, I know what's been done before, so I'm going to do the same thing because everybody was protected then, nobody got in trouble. It's not really a good way to do it. First, it doesn't demonstrate integrity, personal and professional integrity, and you still may be held accountable for your decisions even if there is a precedence. Second, it leads to inconsistent ethics and politics. So the principles imply subsidiary obligations, such as duties of honesty, fidelity, respect for privacy, respect for human dignity, and obligations not to lie, cheat, steal, kill, maim, coerce, deceive, and exploit. So these are all very important words in research, and there are significant sanctions or penalties if someone is confirmed as a transgressor on any of these cases. When you see duty and obligation, obviously you are talking about obligations, requirements to behave in a certain way, or to act in a certain way, or to respond in a certain way if you see that these are not being honored as obligations by other individuals. So principles for ethical conduct in research can be considered separately. So other things being equal, you follow these principles. When the principles conflict, use the decision-making method described earlier. There has to be a theoretical justification. So these principles have a direct bearing on the goals of research. They promote cooperation, collaboration, and trust among researchers. They promote social responsibility and the public's support for science. And they meet legal requirements. And there are also, obviously, broader moral and ethical grounds to contribute to the justification for invoking principles in making a decision or judgment or to act. So we invoke theories, principles, and rules in times of need when we are to make a decision, act, or to judge. So along those lines of steps, those 6 steps for reasoning in the decision-making process, the theories, the principles, and the rules are invoked. So the theories are most global, principles are more specific, and the rules are most specific. So how do we choose if they are in conflict? Do we do a cost-benefit analysis, quality of life analysis, personal gain or loss? Put a question mark there, of course, because our personal gain or loss should be the bottom of the list whenever we're assessing the potential outcomes and what weight any one of those outcomes and the good to be gained from that decision leading to that outcome if it were to be followed. We don't ignore self through all of this. As we said, we as scientists or people working in science make sacrifices for our own personal gain to reach this point, to become a technical expert, to become a knowledge expert, to become the professional with the high level of proficiency and integrity. Many years are dedicated with little or no income, with the hope that someday the income to be reached or achieved or earned is great enough to justify the loss of income over those large number of years. So we don't rule out the possibility for personal gain or becoming a millionaire by developing your own company or whatever it is. But it should not obviously be the first on the list. And we have to look at the choices and determine ways of evaluating and analyzing what really is the nature of the conflict and the principles, theories, rules that are invoked. Obviously, in a cost-benefit analysis, what you're seeing here inherently is non-maleficence and beneficence as being key parts of this. So potential risk of harm. There's always a cost-benefit analysis. The cost may not be in dollar signs to the institution, to society, to the company, to the research institute, and those types of things. It may be just, cost of lives, or the side effects are too costly for the benefit that might be achieved. Cost-benefit analyses in research are very important. The cost to a pharmaceutical company or society in general to benefit individuals that suffer from a rare disease in very small numbers, in just hundreds of individuals in a society, a nation of hundreds of millions. It isn't justified to spend the large amounts of money to develop effective treatments and therapies. And it basically doesn't happen very often unless there is a true benefactor that makes some type of a contribution. So we see that the cost-benefit analysis will be invoked quite frequently. Quality of life is a little bit different along the line. There has to be some loss of function, loss of quality of life before we would, or potential loss, before we would invoke this type of analysis in our reasoning to make a decision. And there certainly are others. I just listed these. But there certainly are guidelines for ethical research conduct. In this course, we use this term as having two meanings. There's our behavior, our conduct in research, and there's also the conduct of research. How do we conduct research so that it is ethical? And that's the experimental design of the course. Right now we're still working on the theoretical and conceptual part of it, so we're talking about research conduct, the behavior of the individuals, how we decide and how we judge. So honesty, objectivity, integrity, carefulness, openness, confidentiality, respect for colleagues, respect for intellectual property, freedom, social responsibility, efficiency, education, competence, equality of opportunity, legality, animal care, and human subjects are about 17 of what certainly would be a longer list if we spent additional time trying to think about it. The authors provided us the list, so it was kind of convenient. To talk about those a little bit, we strive for honesty in all scientific communications, and we do not fabricate, falsify, or misinterpret data. So see the 2 points, the 2 perspectives in each of these virtues. This is actually, in essence, a list of virtues. You demonstrate the virtue of honesty if you are honest, of objectivity if you are objective. So these are values and virtues in that context. So they're always a two-part. You do something, but you also do not do something else. So the good and the bad kind of together. Strive for objectivity and experimentation. Avoid and minimize bias. We will talk about bias. We'll define different types of bias in the experimental design part of the course and become much more familiar with bias conceptually and factually and practically even. And act with integrity in all aspects of the research process. The final slide in this presentation deals with the integrity in a bit more detail. This is an umbrella type of virtue that cannot be, in essence, on its own without the presence of virtually every other characteristic and virtue that we saw on the list and others. Avoid careless errors and negligence. Keep good records of research activities. So we're going to deal with errors, talk about record keeping. Share data, results, ideas, tools, and resources. Be open to criticism and new ideas. Protect confidential communications. Respect your colleagues and students. Respect intellectual property. Do not use unpublished data, methods, results without permission. Give credit when credit is due. Obviously, we'll talk about plagiarism in great detail and all these other matters as we go through the semester. Promote freedom of thought and inquiry. And this is a difficult one. How do you meet this but protect your ideas if you're considering patenting and licensing and setting up your own private business, even though you might work for a public agency or a private agency, but you want to be able to branch off? How do you do that and still promote freedom of thought and inquiry? Strive to promote social good and prevent or mitigate social harms. So again, it's the beneficence and non-maleficence principles coming through here. Use resources efficiently. Aid in education of future scientists. So use resources efficiently is a primary case of distributive justice. If you have all the state-of-the-art equipment, do you allow others to use it or not to benefit the institution, the other scientists, and so on and so forth? To educate students and future scientists, to maintain and improve your own professional competence and expertise. So we know that in the healthcare profession, they have to accumulate certain number of continuing education units to be certified and licensed annually or biannually or so on and so forth. This doesn't exist in science, but certainly it is expected. You attend professional meetings, you present your work, you go to workshops, you get special training, and so on and so forth. Promote equality of opportunity for science students and colleagues. Know and obey relevant laws and governmental policies. Show proper respect and care for animals when using them in research. Protect human subjects during research trials, and be attentive to key sensitivities, certainly justifiable in society at the time, such as vulnerable populations is a key term for human subject research now, and as those of us that are watching the news here in September 2005, we hear a lot about vulnerable populations with what's going on with the flooding subsequent to the hurricane in Louisiana and the other states that are affected, but in particular New Orleans with the flooding. What are the conditions for the individuals to be considered part of vulnerable populations? It's not just poverty. There's some wealthy individuals that are holding their ground, and they'll die with their wealth right there in New Orleans, and they'll refuse to leave for an eternity. Then we come to the idea of personal, professional, and institutional. So what are the guidelines that extend across all three of these? They often go along with specific professional codes of ethics and should be used along with them. So the institutions must take an active part in maintaining ethical standards for research and in general. And it's not just to police or regulate the individuals, it's to present the institution with an image as well. What is the image, the ethical image of the institution? How does it present itself to society? So the institutional ethics, so far ethics in research has been discussed at the individual level. The institutions also should or are obligated to take the initiative to implement policies on ethics and research, and also implement ethics research as a course of study. And as we see next in leadership, by example, this will help researchers at the individual level and streamline the ethical values in research, making them cohesive. So institutions should do, it's not really so much the must, they should do it out of a personal and professional commitment, and also to comply with rules and regulations. If we act only to be compliant with rules and regulations, that's not being moral, that's not being ethical. We must do it from a motivation within because we desire to be a good person and to do the right things. So examples of institutional policies: research misconduct, data management, conflicts of interest, intellectual property, human subjects. So the IRB is the Institutional Review Board. If I'm asked to fill out a survey, even if there's no obvious risk of harm to me coming through email at UTSA, I instantly reply and say, what's the IRB number and where's the statement to accrue me or recruit me as a human subject. Everybody always gets kind of in a fuss when I do that, but I know that they cannot ask me to be a human subject in a research, even if it seems to be the most innocuous survey, without sending their proposal to get approval through the Institutional Review Board. Same thing with the Animal Research, Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee, radiation safety, biohazards. So there are committees on this campus for each of these, and of course you'll be asked in this course either to fill out an IACUC form or a biohazard committee form, research compliance, sexual harassment, tenure and promotion, faculty-student relationships. So all aspects of professional behavior, especially at an academic institution, even at private institutions, these have to be dealt with. There have to be institutional policies. Emerging and originating from the commitment of the institution to be a good institution by motivation of inherent value systems, not simply to comply with rules and regulations. So ethics, education, and leadership. Ethics cannot be forced upon an individual. You can put them in jail, it's not going to make them ethical. You can fine them, it's not going to make them ethical if they don't have that intrinsic motivation to be ethical. It should be taught as a subject. If taught with example or role model, it will be more effective. Well, go looking for your role models. We'll try to find some through case studies, even if they're negative role models. We are teaching it as a subject here, and certainly should be guidance. And just look around you and study people that are in science and learn how to make judgments and how to get information to develop those role models. Some role models are most effective as passive role models. If you ask them to be active mentors, sometimes individuals are less effective than just being observed and valued through that approach. The study of ethics combined with leaders or prominent figures who have made their commitment and adherence to ethical ways of research effectively helps budding young scientists to conduct exemplary research. Authors are very eloquent, aren't they? Nowadays, corporate cultures in organization have an ethical statement of their own, and people in management positions should set an example. Otherwise, which ethical values may become diluted in course of time due to non-adherence. There have been many examples in recent history of corporations that have gone wrong and are dead, basically. So the best way for leaders to promote ethical research is to teach students at all levels about it, rather than serving as a policing agency, only to attack you when you do something wrong. In other words, mentors also teach ethics to students and colleagues by example. Large corporations and institutions need ethical leadership. Leadership should be questioned and judged as to being ethical or non-ethical. It strengthens the institutions, the leaders. Leadership involves ethics, vision, initiative, and realism, and ethical leaders have done a great deal of good for our society. Scientists usually have at least 3 qualities, but placing emphasis on ethics would be good for research and for society. So the ethics as the hallmark quality of sound leadership includes 4 characteristics. Ethics itself requires a whole host of virtues that we've seen. Vision requires perspective, initiative, creativity, and courage to take on the challenge, and realism to set achievable goals. Finally, then, personal and professional integrity is the key. It is the overarching value pillar of an individual's character and their capability of representing it within a profession. A person with integrity is someone whose beliefs, attitudes, and actions form a coherent whole. One may show lack of integrity by being inconsistent and insincere. For example, a person who cites values or principles that have no bearing on the decision would lack integrity by being insincere. Acting with integrity in justifying a decision requires a sincere commitment to standards that transcend that decision. These are statements taken directly, verbatim from our textbook. I felt it was most appropriate to end with that at this lecture when we complete our discussion on the first chapter on research ethics, concepts, and theories. This obviously will not make you an expert in research ethics and theories and concepts, but it presents enough, I think, to where you can assess your own integrity from moment to moment and seek outside contributions to your growth and development personally and professionally, and inculcate values and morals that contribute to your integrity so you have a broad-based integrity to be strong and face the challenges of making decisions, acting, and judging, and being a professional in how you deal with such matters. Never making attacks personal, keeping it on a professional level. It's one of the worst things that can happen within professions is when individuals attack other individuals on a personal level rather than on their professional actions, behaviors, and decision making. Also, with the strong integrity, you know that what you have done is right. It is what you feel you must do as an individual and as an individual professional, and what you feel is best to represent your profession, your professional society, and society in general. And if you suffer repercussions for being a moral agent by your standards as you have inculcated them into your integrity, then you can live with it. And I'll close with that and step down from my soapbox and see you all next time. Thank you very much.